What I do is I design businesses from the inside out, and a big part of it is branding. And just to give you my vision and why I'm up here, is we enrich millions of people's lives by assisting and shifting their services and products into authentic brands, brands that connect to people's intellect, emotions, experience for a better tomorrow. So that's really why I'm up here, is to impact literally thousands of businesses. Over the years, just to give you a little background of who Mark had spoken about, is like Apple, ABC, Mattel. I've actually, my company and myself have represented all these companies, but it was more than just representing them. It was about making them leaders as well. Like Fox, you probably see King of the Hill. So we helped brand the King of the Hill to be a licensing product. And then what he mentioned with Philips, we created a standard for DVDs to take over VHS and Beta, and the list goes on. And like Lion King for Disney, we brought them out, the theatrical release. So that's where I spent the last, 25 years I've been in business. The first 10 years was only working with Fortune 500. But the last 15 years, what I've been doing is helping out entrepreneurs and small business owners to mid-sized business owners to large business owners. But I've been looking at what's been missing for these companies, even the Fortune 500 companies. So I put together a system, and I explained to you a lot of what the processes are that I take companies through, no matter what size you are, and whether you're B2B or B2C. And the results that we've done for companies is really produced billions of dollars in a market space and got them into big box retail or whatever they want to do, get more known on the internet or TV or what have you. So let's just start with what is not a brand, because a lot of people, they think branding's a logo or a corporate identity or the business, but it's really not. So I'm going to go through this very carefully of what is a brand and what it is not. So it is not a logo. It's not a corporate identity. It's not marketing, advertising, PR, or graphic design. It's not the company, organization, product, or service. So the question becomes, what is it? Those things contribute, but that itself is not a brand. So it's not what you say, it's what the customer says. So give you an illustration, if I say Ferrari, most people will understand it's a luxury car, it's a fast car, it's an Italian car. So see how it switched, where it's about what you say as a consumer. Doesn't matter if you've driven one, but you have an expectation of what that brand stands for. Okay, you starting to get this? I'm gonna go really deep with this, because everybody here, whether you're an inventor or a product designer, really need to understand it's not about your product. Okay, and I'm gonna demonstrate why. Mindshare, and especially with social media has taken on such a big hit, because so much is about sharing with like minds. And that has to do, by the way, with the fourth and fifth generation specifically. We have 5 generations of buyers. We got World War II vets, we got the baby boomers, and we got X, Y, and Z, and they all think differently. And that's what causes shift in cultures, and it causes shift in our buying habits, which I'm gonna go through as well. So it's about an experience and emotional connection. You can think of it this way. A brand is an extension of your personality. People rely on brands, and brands rely on people. It helps you cut through the clutter. Let's say if you're going down the shopping aisle and you see a box of cereal and you don't recognize it, but you recognize Cheerios, especially if you're in a foreign country, the likelihood you're going to pick up that cereal box and trust it, okay? Because it's familiar to you. It creates value, equity, trust. It builds loyalty, which is the name of the game. It attracts customers locally, globally, and it produces a much higher profit when you consider yourself as a brand and design your business as a brand, meaning your products and services. It's worth more to business and consumers. So that is really what a brand is. It's really what is controlled in a consumer's mind. Now I'm going to explain how do you influence the consumer, and that is branding. So here again, a brand is what the consumer owns. Branding is about developing your ideas and communicating to the consumer how you want them to respond emotionally, intellectually about your product or service or company. So it's a process of building brand it's a process in building a brand through strategy, implementation, and management, which I'm going to go through those 3 series. It's about aligning the core values and a brand essence through touch points. These are quote unquote business language of branding and the definitions. I'm going to explain more, but I'll explain what a touch point is further on. And it is the most powerful business language today. That's why the big Fortune 500 companies always keep moving on and keep merging and doing acquisitions. But I'm here to actually pass that information down for any size company, okay? It involves all stakeholders, meaning investors, your employees, the manufacturers, the consumer. It really does involve everyone when you really think about the impact of branding. Branding can build businesses, cultures, influence society, cause social change, and build nations. That's how powerful. So if I say like, you know, that's why when it came to Levi's back in the early 90s, late 80s, why Russia bought up Levi's, because the Levi jeans stood for America. Okay, they wanted a piece of America. So you can see how things symbolize and create that emotional connection when it comes to even countries, or what countries stand for as well. That always comes up. It's like, when do you start to brand? When you have a new concept, when you create a new business, a new product, you create a new service. And also when you want to gain more market share. So a lot of companies, if they're not current, they will reach a lid and start to die off. So the question is, how do you gain more market share? You got to reconsider rebranding, repositioning your entire business for higher profits. Especially now with the new economy, a lot of companies are dying off because they haven't really rethought how the new consumer responds now. And so you got to look at rebranding your overall business. Or your brand identity is fragmented, which I see most commonly 99% of the time with entrepreneurs to small to large companies, meaning like their color schemes are off, or the tonality between a brochure and their website and a commercial, the tone's wrong, or they are separate from one another. Your brand identity is outdated. A lot of times you're not current with the times. Your overall identity looks like it's the 70s when you're not even current in the 21st century. You have a new line extension you want to bring to market. So let's say you're Saturn and you want to bring a new car out. Well, then you got to really consider about branding at that time and point. Think about your product, think about your company, think about your service, think about how your product is really different than any other product that's out there. It can't be similar, it can't be somewhat the same, but it has to really differentiate, okay? Like for example, you with the frame, when it came to the 3-point pivot, that really differentiated of how most frame companies handle their frame, is that you have to take out the photo and move it in a portrait to a landscape, where basically has a very quick way of doing it. That is going to be revolutionary, in my opinion, for that entire industry. So you could capitalize on that and actually license the idea, and we're talking about licensing, you can license the idea, do private licensing, and then have multiple revenue streams off that one idea, okay? So he could sell parts of his company. So anyways, I got excited when you showed me. The question becomes too, is how unique is your intellectual property as well? Intellectual property and protecting is the name of the game. And then is your brand an aspiration for the consumer? Like, can you see yourself having your product in the consumer house or in a consumer's hand and just go, wow, that would really excite my consumer because it feels like an extension of their lifestyle or an aspiration of where they like to be. That's the reason why cars, the automotive industry, like let's say BMW, you got the 100, the 300, the 500, the 7. The idea is for you to buy like a 300 or 100. The aspiration is that you get so excited about that car that you want to move into the 500 and 700 series. That's aspiration. So a lot of times when I look at companies and their products, they actually have ability to create a line extension. Okay, low point, midpoint, high point. Okay? And then basically then what you're doing is just changing the aesthetics, but you're keeping the guts the same pretty much. And then you got 3 revenue streams right there, okay? It is a science and creativity, but it equals high ROI when you put the two together. It has to be science, which is functionality, creativity, which is imagination, and then you end up with winning brands. So whole brain thinking. This is where literally I'm creating a new standard in branding, which is really placed on the emphasis of the left side brain is rational and business and structure of how good is your idea, and then from the business standpoint, how strong is your business model to produce profit. Then there's the right side is how are you going to engage the consumer emotionally, because the consumer does not buy until they are engaged emotionally. They do not buy until they're engaged emotionally. So that's why your product has to be really designed well so it has the aesthetics. And here again, I just want to point out the gentleman, I'm sorry, what's your name? Sam. With his frame, it was beautiful. It was like well thought out, it was quality, okay? So that was a point of aspiration that it wasn't going to be made out of plastic, it's a throwaway thing. Quality pays off. That's why with Apple and big brands, they focus on quality. By the way, you could drive the price up when it's based on quality. If you're basing your product on price, there's only one in that space that could master that. And that's why Walmart has mastered that space, but other retail space cannot do that. That's why Target decided to go with designer-oriented brands. You see the difference? But Target's really pulled ahead. And same with Apple, they've really pulled ahead because they understand aesthetics and quality always pays off in the big picture. It may cost more, but in the long run, they don't have to fight down there with everybody else, okay? So here again, I'm giving you some real actual feedback of what takes place in the industries, all industries. So one of the biggest things is what's the brand promise. You have to think about your customer and look from their perspective, because a lot of times what I notice with small, mid-sized, even large companies, they're looking at their product, which is great, but they're never really taking consideration the consumer. How are they going to engage, and what are you going to promise them that differentiates you from all other products? Okay, did you get that? So just give you some quick examples like FedEx. What gave FedEx the edge is because at the time there's really the post office. UPS wasn't really quite around just yet, but the post office was their competitor in that space. So they said, well, what can we do differently? We can guarantee overnight. So absolutely, positively guaranteed overnight was their tagline that differentiated them to the consumer. So the consumer, through that tight communication piece, they understood what the brand stood for. Does that make sense? So a lot of times taglines are really your DNA to your position of what differentiates you from all others, okay? So another example would be like Avis, we try harder. When Avis was figuring out Hertz, they knew Hertz was number one. They said, well, we can't claim we're number one. What can we claim? How can we position ourselves differently through customer service? And they put all their emphasis on customer service and did the training for all the employees. Then they hang their hat on the tagline, Avis, we try harder. You get that? You get how this works? So then what happened was that they became number one the following year, but they kept the tagline because that really was authentic to them. And that's really the core to branding now, is authenticity, which I'm going to get into quite a bit. So can a business deliver on its promise again and again? So think about your business. You're more than just a product, you're a business, okay? Even if you want to do licensing agreements, you still got to consider yourself as a business person, a businesswoman, a businessman. The question becomes on what can you deliver over and over again on your promise? You got to define your promise, then you got to look at what can you deliver over and over again, okay? Marketing a brand promise will build value equity to the business faster. When you define your promise and differentiate, you will go to market faster and start earning a profit much quicker, or get that licensing agreement that you're looking for because you can express to them why they should invest in your business or product or service, okay? So implementing your brand identity. So we first covered strategy, and that was just a touch of strategy. I could talk about strategy. We do 3-day-long strategies, but I just want to give you some of the key points. So there's touch points. So what is an authentic brand touch point? Or a set of intellectual property assets that are linked to the core brand. Parts of your core brand, as I discussed, is what differentiates you, what's your core, like what is your promise. There's also the vision, there's also your values, there's also the philosophy, there's also your overall position. I'm not going to get into that, but you can see the brand core is the essence of what's going to give you legs, okay, and attract and be a bigger magnet for who you want to attract, like a merger or acquisition, or let's say stockholders, or let's say partners, or let's say licensing, or let's say sponsors. All that makes a difference when you nail down the core. So then what is the touch points? The touch points are everything that communicate and express your brand. That could be the name of your company, the colors, what people call the logo, the website, the trade show booth, the packaging. Everything is a contact point for an emotional response to your brand. It's more than the product. You starting to get this? It's much more than the product. So a lot of times what I do with companies when they're preparing to license or want to be a merger acquisition is we got to be clear about the brand and also reposition them so the bigger companies can look at them as a professional grown-up company, okay? So we could cut off years of what would take to get out the market and do it in a few months. The difference is being attractive. So all touch points need to communicate one consistent story. Another way to express the process of branding is you're telling a story. What's a story? Everybody here has a story about their product and how they got to the derivative of their idea. That's really important when it comes to storytelling and building your brand. What's making it unique? What problems did you have with products that weren't out there that gave you the idea about your own product? And that's really critical. That becomes part of the essence to your vision and your philosophy. But that's what investors look at too, your passion. You know, I always say there's two things that really get entrepreneurs going that give them success, is their ability and passion. The ability and passion, okay? And if you don't have the ability, then that's when you create a team that has the ability. But passion is what's critical for every business owners, like Steve Jobs. It wasn't about money, it was about his passion. You see that? Remember when he dropped out of Apple and Apple started tanking? Then he came back in. Well, there's two things he had, was the vision and passion, okay? So touch points generate profits and are primary drivers to authentic brands, and they create value and equity. So this is one of the critical things. I'm going to give you some demonstrations here of what companies and how they fail based on touch points. So let's say that this shape represents your core value, your philosophy, your brand promise, right? What differentiates you from all the other products that are out there. Okay, so it's a quality, it's a position, it's a value, it's a philosophy, everything I just spoke. These are your basically channels of how you want to create your touch points and communicate to your audience, to your customers. And let's say that this shape represents your logo, this shape represents your brochure, the next shape represents your website, the next shape represents your product design, the packaging, the trade show, booth, and so on. But you see that they're all different. Nothing is really, first of all, nothing reflects your core values. The second thing is nothing is telling one consistent story. So you really look like you're all over the map. So you don't look professional at this moment. You look like right now you're just starting off. But I'm going to show you some shortcuts of how you can look professional, and then you're attracting the right buyers. That could be, here again, licensing deals, partners, or customers. So let's say now this is you, okay, with your brand core. Then you have the same channels, and now you're building everything to reflect that core, your philosophy. Like the name has something to do with your philosophy, okay? The tagline has to do something with your overall brand promise. But each touch point, what's called the brand identity as well, it's all consistent. The same fonts, the same colors, the same tonality of the body language in your copy for the trade show, for the flyer, for the website, for the packaging. Everything is consistent, right? So what happens now is that now it becomes more transparent to the consumer what makes you different and what you stand for. You see how that works? Each touch point becomes a communication piece and a contact piece for an experience that you're giving to your consumer. When I say consumer, I'm not just saying the end consumer, I'm saying like licensing agreements, partners, investors, and so forth and so on. So what happens now is that the consumer understands that channel of what you offer, where the other one becomes a barrier because everything is scattered. What I call it here again the Sybil effect. So what happens is now the consumer is left with what's called a brand image of the image of what they think of your company, product, or service without even having to use it. That's why automobile, like you watch television commercials, you get a general idea of what a Hyundai would feel like. You get a general idea of what a Lexus would feel like. You get a general idea of what an Aston Martin would feel like. They're carving out a story before you even bought. It's not, advertising is not about creating an ad to buy. It's about creating a brand awareness of what that product will promise you if you were to purchase. You see the difference? Okay? That's only one touch point when I say advertising, but a lot of times I see, like, for example, websites are misdesigned. There's actually 7 generations of websites, and a lot of people are using 2nd generation. They're not using ways of capturing data, but that's a whole nother class. And so what happens is that the payoff is this. You have more effective use of capital, okay, because you're borrowing money from yourself, you're borrowing money from friends, you're borrowing money from, you know, the dentist or whatever. The point being is that you better be careful with that money. You know, it's your life. So you better have it where you're very strategic about how you want to build your brand or how you want to position your product and service as a brand. It's a much more effective way of using media because now you know the sequence of media to use. Your resources, faster profits happen, faster value, equity, and of course more customers. So it's a whole strategy behind really building a brand. I'm just showing you 2 avenues I see most common, and unfortunately, based on your left or right, on my left or right, but on the left-hand side, where it's the Sybil effect, becomes barrier to entry to the market space. And this is how 99% of companies I go into are designing their brand. Because believe it or not, by the way, you're branding whether you know it or not. The question is, are you branding by default, by the hip, or are you branding with intention and purpose? You get the difference? So when you brand with intention and purpose, that's when you, what I call quantum leaping into the market space. You take a lot of years of shortcuts. What it would take years are taking now months. So this is just gives you an idea, because a lot of it here, well, it is a branding firm, because a lot of people I hear from designers, which, you know, they say they do branding, advertising, say they do branding, marketing, say they do branding, PR, they say do branding. That's not branding per se, that helps the brand, but that itself is not branding as far when it comes to a branding firm. So what is a branding firm? So a branding firm is where you have really one director, which is called a CBO, Chief Branding Officer, that's really looking at the strategy, execution, and management of a business for a customer, their product or service, and then they're using all these medias, but they're doing it under one roof. They're really doing it from the standpoint of keeping consistency and having control. Because if you ever notice, if you hire a graphic designer for, let's say, a website, another one to do your brochure, now there's lack of communication because everybody has their own style, okay? That's graphic design, that's not branding, okay? That's advertising, that's not branding. This is how a true branding firm is designed, a true branding firm. So everything is done under one roof, like, you know, your applications, animation, social media, television, commercials. The point being is that the client then really has only to deal with one company versus 15 different companies. So now I'm going to go into how does this all work when it's put together? What are the results of it? And what is the effort in building a brand? And this is going to give you some actual showcases of thriving, living brands. So first of all, I'm just going to give you what's involved with the package design to get a package in a space. Like, let's say you want to get into Target, or let's say you want to get into Toys R Us. This is an actual case study of a startup company that we wanted to compete against Hasbro and Mattel, a pure startup company. Okay, so I'm just going to give you what we did to actually outdo Mattel and Hasbro. So this is a company that wanted to redo the packaging for the little girls line for horses, and this is what's typical. This was actually in Toys R Us. So our client wanted to create a chip that allowed the horse to speak, and wanted to deal with the girls nowadays, the teenagers that have a lot more personality than when I was growing up. They're a lot more individualist, right? So this was their competitor. So the first thing that we did, we went through a strategy session, which is 2 to 3 days long. We figured out their vision, their philosophy, their brand promise, what was it to differentiate, what was the cost of the product, what was going to be their way of operation, so forth and so on. Once we figured that part out, then we went into, well, what kind of name would be appropriate for this current technology and what's relevant today? So we came up with about 75 different names, and we landed on Sassy Stable, Sidekicks, To Hit the Trot, and Giddy Up Girl. Then we went to their trademark attorneys to find out which ones we could trademark, which actually we were able to trademark all these because they were very unique and unusual. But you could see it gave a suggestion of what made this horse different from its personality right off the bat. So there's 5 ways you can create a name, which is generic, descriptive, suggestive, fanciful, and arbitrary. All those have status as far as protection, by the way, from the trademark office, but also it gives you higher ranking of the ability to brand and differentiate from all the others. So I know I'm speaking really fast, I know there's a lot of language, but I just want to give you a quick overview because I only got an hour. So anyways, we landed on Sassy Stables because we want to sell a whole line of horses, not just one, but a line of horses. The second step was then developing a really great mark. And I'm not going to get into it, but there's a huge difference between a logo and a mark. A mark, the long and short of it, has about 1,000 times more value than a logo. And to give you an example, would be like Nike. So let's say that you own Nike, and you go, hey Howard, I want to sell Nike, and I'll give you all the distribution channels, I'll give you all the stores, retail space, I'll give you all the inventory, I'll give you all the sales reps, I'll give you all the licensing, but I'm not going to give you the swoosh. Okay, what's the company worth? Or I'm not going to give you the name or the swoosh. Okay, it's not worth anything. So you see how branding is about contributing and creating those attributes that when you hear the name, you feel it inside your gut that, oh, I recognize that brand and it does something for me. That's ultimately one of the ultimate goals behind branding properly. So we want to create a really unique mark that was different and differentiated. So we created all these handmade marks that were very unique and differentiated themselves from Hasbro and Mattel, by the way, all the big boys. So we came up with this mark that was very unique, very different, very now, okay? And we really changed the whole identity system for Toys R Us and Target because most of Hasbro and Mattel were still using primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. So we said, wow, they're really dated. It's not a good or bad thing, but we could differentiate and be more relevant, more current for the younger teenagers so they could get an emotional response when they see the packaging and the name. So we went with the pinks, and we went with the purples, and we went with the yellow and this unusual shape. Then we went through the packaging, and we went through some unusual acetate. We went with the most acetate you could fit on a package that revolutionized the industry as well. So we started to revolutionize the colors, and we came from a whole new angle from the standpoint of the acetate, but still be within a price point for manufacturing and qualify for the drop test. So there's the least amount of returns. That's called the drop test. Anyways, I don't want to get too technical. So we had to go through these parameters and requirements, and we passed through every one of them through this new radical design. And we also wanted to show the other horses on the back of the packages and tell a story. So when they went to the website, when they went to the website, it was now about buying accessories. So that's where they made the money. It's kind of like when you buy a car, they're really giving the car away. They make it off the service and parts. That's where the money is generated, by the way. By the way, you should be thinking about your own product that way. What can you do to generate more revenue? It's going to be more than the product itself. A lot of times it is about the accessory. So this is the packaging that we ended up with. We did these 3D models. This isn't the horse, but we wanted to show it in an environment. So we wanted, this Sienna is a horse that painted. And so we want to create an environment that suggested painting, okay, like in, in Venice. Then this is the actual horse packaging. Then this is the actual back of the package that we did cross promotion for other line items and other horses. Okay, so we had Morgan, Roxy, Sienna, and Shimmer. They all had a personality, they all had a story to tell, and they all were relevant to today's market of young girls to connect with. It's all about connection. And this is what's called trade dress, is when you have more than one package, but it's uniformed on a shelf, so it takes on a bigger presence, by the way. It's kind of like the dummy books, the yellow, how they all come together, and you're going, wow, that's really powerful on the shelf. So again, think about your own. I'm only showing you this so you guys get ideas, okay? And it's not up here to talk. So think about your own products, how you can create it so you have an actual trade dress. By the way, you could trademark that with attorneys, and it gives more rise to the value of your idea. So if you want to be bought out, they have your valuation's higher. When a valuation is done, it's higher than your balance books, what's on the balance books, right? So not to get too technical here again, but that's this branding, that's why it's the most powerful language. So getting into Perfectly Express, so that was a made-up company, started from scratch, and we did actually outperform them in Hasbro, Mattel, and the little girls line at Toy Fair. That was announced, by the way. Most likely to succeed and outperform. And then we had Perfectly Express. I'm just going to give you another case study here. This woman came to me, she called it the perfect picnic. She wanted to bring picnic, she had the right attitude, the right passion. She wanted to bring families back together and using picnic. But her picnic basket was really typical, and from the price point, it would be very expensive to produce and take too much shelf space up. But she didn't know all that. All she had was her idea and passion, okay? So I looked at it and I go, wow, we could really do something around this, but we have to really be relevant to today's market and take advantage of technology and really think outside of what's been done before and really reinvent that whole category, by the way. So the first thing that we did, I'm going to show you the shortcut, but it took like 75 different marks to come up with. But we ended up creating this mark for her because she really wanted to sell a bag that carried food hot and cold, but gave it a higher lift, so she had a higher price tag. So we had to make it really elegant, okay? This is really how it's done. So the more sophisticated you make your product, and the more sophisticated you make your identity, the more you're going to yield a higher price point. So by doing so now was designing the package, and we found a way to design a package that kept food hot and cold up to 3 hours. And so we designed these bags that were actually flat, so they stacked really well, didn't take too much space, and were very lightweight to ship. Okay, so there's a lot of things that fit with the model as far as being profitable. Okay, because her first idea was not very profitable, she'd be losing money. The second idea, now she has a lot of yield margins between the cost of doing business and her profitability. Okay, so we get into cost analysis to find out what would be the sweet spot. Then it was about telling a story. Now that we got the package and the identity, the mark, all that's been trademarked, now it's about, well, who do we want to attract? Well, we want to attract reps to rep the product. So now it's about what kind of story do we want to tell? So each leaflet started to tell a story about us, the co-branding opportunity. She always loved Audrey Hepburn Foundation. So we actually made an appointment to see Audrey Hepburn. And because they had similar philosophies, because we defined her philosophy, then we went on the web to find out Audrey Hepburn had her foundation had the same philosophy. It did. So what happened was that we were able to make an appointment, talk about the similar philosophy, and he actually took us on as a co-brand partner, which you say they rarely do that. So then we told about the story, the product, the display, and then we also told about the package, how unique they are. And we also talked about the team. A team is really, really critical when you're talking about building your business, because investors want to know the experience of your team members and what are they going to do for you so they feel safe about their money. Investors want to see how safe is their money and how fast of a return. Those are the two things that are on their mind. okay? Safety is based on your team and protection of intellectual property through trademarks, patents, okay, or trade secrets. And then there's actually from the standpoint how fast you need to build a revenue. So you got to have a lot of times you got to have a business plan, a marketing plan, okay? So then it came to the website itself. We wanted to create a very animated website for the reps so they got really excited about the packaging and how they could actually make a lot of money by repping this product into boutique shops and big box retail stores. And then this is the trade show display, which put everything together, which really stood out from everybody else's trade show at the Gift Mart. And she ended up picking up reps right there on the spot. That was not our intention to get reps right off the spot. It was really a debut, but we said let's take them anyways. And so we were able to get reps and start repping the company immediately. This just gives you an idea too from the medical industry. Here again, you can apply this to your own idea. It's about product, but this company's been around for many, many years, and this was their logo. Okay, so it showed someone trying to get out of a wheelchair. They have to do with assistant medical equipment, so wheelchairs, walking canes, bed rails, so forth and so on. They do beautiful work, but there was a misperception because their identity spoke like they're Walmart versus like Macy's or Nordstrom's. But the product is really based like on Macy's and Nordstrom's, but they're telling a story saying, well, no, we're Walmart. So they were having problems of closing deals. They really had like a 15% ratio in the wholesale space of closing deals. So we redesigned their identity completely, their mark. So because we found out that most people want to retire in warm weather. Okay, so that's the reason for the blue. And then we came up with a tagline, live the longer life you love. Because you're in your golden ages, and a lot of people, which I'll show you through their packaging, they look like they're suffering. So this is the packaging, their old packaging, and you can see like this guy, this older gentleman, trying to get out of bed, really struggling. And then one of the keywords that we figured out as far as their value, there's 5 keywords when we go through strategies. One of the keywords was innovation. And I said, does this package say innovation to you? Like, you know, in a way that after we do strategy, I always do what are called a brand audit, have to bring in all their product, bring in all the material, so they could see firsthand through science that what they're telling their customer a lot of times, well, every time, is really opposite or near opposite of really how they want to be known in the industry, okay? So what we did was we created a package that really talked about the lifestyle that you would have by using a product. It's not about the use and showing a product, it was the outcome. You get it? This is an aspiration. This is how Toyota does it, this is how Apple does it. I'm giving you key secrets here of how it's really done so you can really boost your idea so it can be taken more seriously out in the market space. So what happens is that we got these models and we said live the longer life you love, and they're really enjoying each other. You see? Because we said, well, the golden years should be about appreciation, about being in a relationship of who you're with, and you can actually get around. So, and we also found out they've been #1 for safety and function, but they didn't have that on the old packaging. So you can see we just simplified everything for the eye, and we created the color scheme so it reminds people of the emotions of warm areas. By the way, they're all trigger points. The typography is very carefully chosen out. The colors are carefully chosen out. The whole layout is designed to communicate the experience of the brand versus just slapping everything together, which is done on the other side, okay? So it has to be well crafted to tell a story that's going to differentiate to produce sales, which ultimately is to produce profits. So this is actually their point of purchase display, and they had really big problems trying to get this in the wholesale space because the guy the CFO comment, and he said that when he brought it in, one of the reps for wholesale said it looked like a trailer hitch. So that was the end of the meeting. And they flew all the way out, brought all their product, and that was the end of the meeting. So this is the solution that we came up with that gave a more aspirational feel, lifestyle feel, and easy to explain how to use the product as well. So out of doing this, by the way, I talked to the CFO, CEO, and they said that after we did this new brand identity, I'm not kidding you, they had a 100% close ratio for the wholesale space. So I said, okay, now that we have a 100% close in the wholesale space, and we were in the strategy session, I designed 2 more revenue streams for them, which is the retail and then the web. And I said the next space I want to conquer and master is really the retail space. So they had the right people in place to be able to create that bridge in communication to retail, but we gave them the identity that made it easier for them to get into retail. You see how that works? It's a team effort, okay? It really is a co-creative team effort. So this is the old website that they had, and then this is a new website that we created for them that had animation, how to use a product. It was very contemporary, and it was very innovative. The other key word that we had, I tell you there's 5 key words as far as values, was friendly, meaning that you could really engage. So that's why the warm color and a sense of warmth to it, so it was engaging, it wasn't put off. You didn't feel put off. Okay. And then we did get them in all these retail stores in about 7 months. They had the right team here again, so it was pretty quick how we got them in all these retail spaces. So basically we grew their sales 32% in 12 months, landed and grew new accounts in mass market, had a 100% close ratio for potential clients. And the big thing is we had a much stronger brand presence. The medical industry is really tough. It's really impacted, so we had to be really radical with our thinking. But fortunately to us, most medical companies are too conservative. And now, take this quote, it is risky to be safe now. It is risky to be safe because there's more products that are out there than ever before, and as a consumer has more choices, okay? So now you gotta think the opposite of how you've been taught in school through your business classes. You gotta think completely opposite to stay up to date in today's current market. So we invented multiple revenue streams for them. Just to show you as well, what I call it is the DNA to your business is the business and the brand. And looking at that DNA is looking at the customer, the business, and the brand all together. This is a radical model because I would look at someone's work and they'd look at the business, which is great, but they wouldn't consider the consumer of how you're going to get and track consumers. But that's not even enough, is what kind of experience you're going to create for the consumer. So I invented literally a new way of looking, what I call master plan, which is a master overview, which takes place over a course of 3 days that are very intense. But we really look at all these 3 components are what's going to make a successful brand, what's going to make your business and product, your service very successful. You have to look at all 3. It's kind of like if you're an inventor, and I could say this because I'm an inventor as well, if you only look at the product without looking at the consumer, you won't be able to produce sales. But if you look at the whole picture, then you have a clearer view of how you're going to produce sales. Does that make sense? So this is just a company that we're really developing right now. They have 52 retail stores, and it's called WSS. And they came to us because they were dropping really radical in sales. It's a new economy, about 10 to 15% a year over the course of the last 3 to 5 years. And they came to us and they heard about what we could do to turn companies around. You know, how we could reposition and rebrand them. So they had this logo, and it was really dated, and it had warehouse shoe sales, and you could see that their advertising was kind of like not traditional strong advertising. It really looked kind of homemade-ish feel. The problem is that they wanted to expand their market to a wider brand of consumers more than just who they had, because they wanted to reach a more affluent market space consumer that had more disposable income, and they couldn't get there with their current look. Okay? So this is their billboards. They had real issues with Nike. Nike wasn't too proud to hang their hat and their name on their billboards. Their trucks design, vehicle designs are completely wrong because each media has a discipline in itself. The storefronts were not that flattering, but they did really well. They built 52 stores, right? The floors themselves, the whole interior design was really off. It was checkered. Here again, it worked fine for who they were after, which we call the Amigo group, but who they were after in this new economy, it was completely off. And so what we did is we started to create mood boards. And the mood boards, we started off by going, well, who's our customer? What do we want the look and feel to be for them? You know, who are they? And so we created what was called how we're going to engage the consumer through the experience of the brand. So we looked at colors, we looked at, you know, the dresses, we looked at how we're going to dress up the brand as if it is a person. So think of it, a brand is like a person, it has a face, it has a heart, and it has a personality. If you don't think of your brand, your product as a personality, it becomes a commodity. If it's a commodity, you're going to be beaten up on price. You get how this works? So think of your product, literally, or your service, or your business, and it has a personality. So after doing that brand audit for them and going through a 3-day, then it was looking at their icon, or their logo, and they were doing more of the same in-house. The graphic designers weren't getting it. They're still doing more of the same. They really weren't creating an icon that could stand out and compete against Foot Locker, compete against Zappos, compete against Puma, Nike, and so forth and so on. So we took it in-house and we said, listen, we got to do this right. So we built them an icon. We came up with 75 different solutions that reflected their position, okay, which is big box retail, which is that they care about the community. We found out all these things that were gold nuggets of how we want to represent them. So then we landed on mark, and then we started to do refinements on the mark, and we started to look at the typeface. Typeface is super critical and so overlooked because of the age of the computer, you know. But there is a total art to typography. It's called typography. What we ended up was this. So it wasn't too highbrow, like like Tiffany's, Nordstrom's, more like Macy's, but it definitely was not Kmart anymore. You see that? So we nailed down a tagline, shoe style selections, and then we gave them the color schematic. And just to go you through really quickly, we actually designed and started to look at every element of their touch points, which was about 500 touch points. So all their buildings, all their architecture, all their signage, all their shirt wraps, cashier's wraps, everything. So we took a look at everything, and we looked at how we're going to create one single voice, one single identity for 52 stores, and we looked at 5 different phases that we're going to roll out, okay? In doing so, we started to realize how we could actually gain also partnerships, a tighter partnership with Nike, Adidas, Air Jordan. They had 3,000 styles, the most styles than any other footwear company, but nobody knew who they were. So we look at the lighting of the interior, we looked at displacement, placement, we look at wall units, wall dividers, everything. Fixtures, floor fixtures, and then we start creating 3D models of the look and feel of the displays. And the end caps are super critical of how we design the end caps. So, give you an idea, this was the old store, okay, old retail store. This is what we end up doing for them, okay? We completely redesigned them, okay? And we ended up designing 4 pilot stores, redesigned the inside, outside. And I told them, I'm not kidding you, I told the CFO, COO, and CEO, and the 7 VPs, I said, we will expect, because remember, they're on decline 10 to 15%, 3 to 5 years. Then I had to turn them around, and I said, we're expected a growth of 10% in the next annual year. And then I talked to the CFO 7 months later. I said, where are we at with numbers? And I'm not kidding you, he said, we gained 200%. And he goes, the president wants to do everything. Redo all the stores. And now they're going to roll out, not only redo 52 stores, they just came out 2 new stores, and they're going to do 4 new stores, retail stores a year. This is this economy, by the way. Okay, so you could thrive in any economy if you brand properly. This is the old vehicle. This is a new vehicle. You know, so every element is a part of the experience and the expectation of what you could expect. This is the old billboard. And then this is a new billboard. By the way, Nike now is very excited to do work with them and giving them sponsorship money and giving a lot more space in their stores and giving them more permission to use them. And this is the old store, another old store, and the new store. This is the old website, the new website, which was pretty extensive because here again, they got over 3,000 models of shoes. So what we do is we increase retail profits 200% in 7 months, increased website profits by 1,629.6% last year, and we increased website profits this year 95.3% over last year, and then stronger partnerships with key vendors, Nike, Adidas, Fila, and the list goes on, Reebok. Multiple sources of revenue. We started off with retail, then we went to website, and now the next space is events. We increased market share, various demographics, and 4 additional stores. So putting it all together is a master strategy, brand execution, and brand management.
We only have time for about 5 or 6 questions. So I guess right here.
Hi, Howard.
Hi.
Okay, now earlier you spoke about touch points.
Yes.
And how many key touch points they are there. You went over touch points like vision and mission. So my question is, how critical are those touch points, and what is the difference between a vision statement and a mission statement, and how does that impact your company's culture?
Okay, those are good questions. So there's actually a vision, mission, philosophy statement, and they're all very different and unique. So a vision statement, the way I define it, here again I'm redefining how business should be built nowadays, literally, is a vision statement is what legacy you're leaving behind on this planet. What difference are you making with your product or your service or your business for a better tomorrow, literally. Okay, so that's a vision. So it's a big aspiration. That's what, Steve Jobs was about and Bill Gates is about, by the way. Okay? Same with Richard Branson. So it's never about the money. The money is the byproduct. It's really about their vision. And same with Mark. Mark has a huge vision. We were talking. It was unbelievable what he's providing for entrepreneurs and inventors that is not here in existence. So he's redefining, literally, the space for inventors to have a full one-stop shop. I mean, it's really powerful. We were talking quite a bit. It's never about the money, okay? It's about passion. Remember what I said? It's about passion. Okay, so then there's the philosophy statement, which is really what I call the GPS to your business. It's really about looking at who you should do business with based on your values. So one of your values is integrity. Then you want to make sure that if you're bringing on an investor or some team member, they have integrity. That's just a short example. The mission statement is based on your goals.
So then basically the philosophy statement is pretty much the same as a value statement.
Pretty close to it. But the great thing about it is that that's kind of like the spirit behind the touch points. Okay, they can't really be seen, but they can be expressed through the written word, or you can feel something about it. Okay, so I know it's a little bit elusive, but it is overlapping. Exactly, it's overlapping. Think of it as like the soul, like a person. You got a soul, right? You got a heart, right? So then the body is the identity is your body. So the brand identity is the body, and a soul is what really makes you tick and what makes you what drives you. That's your philosophy, that's your vision, those are your values that are inside, okay? Your mission is kind of like your brain saying, okay, I got this goal to move forward to, and the identity is how you dress.
She's basically asking, what's the best way to create buzz for her product online?
Okay, well that had to do with social media. By the way, the website's the most critical thing to build before social media. Do you get that? Social media is just a net. Most people have it the opposite. In fact, your product is the first thing. Your brand's the first thing to build, along with your product. Then you build a website, and then you create social media, okay? So a lot of time it'd be using like Facebook and Twitter and blogging is really important to bring in traffic. Keywords, okay? You get someone that does web optimization, which is an art, by the way, okay? Because a lot of people don't realize that if they're really good and you got hired someone, ultimately the ideal way is that they're on it day in, day out to figure out what words are people looking up, what misspelled words are they looking up, and then you actually rank higher, and then you create like maybe 15 websites that link one direction to your website. It can't be back and forth. Google does not like that. And another thing is videos. Videos are huge. So if you create a video and then you create tags, what are, keywords within the video, then that helps as well when it comes to Google ranking, okay? So, because YouTube is owned by Google.
Hello. Hi. I really appreciated your presentation. There were a few customers that wanted to be interested in selling the product, kind of like a multi-level media type of thing. They really loved my product, and they wanted to actually sell it to different customers themselves.
Okay.
So when you talked about opening up a different stream of revenue, I wasn't sure how much sense that would make for my business, but what would you think?
Well, that could be like an affiliate programming. These are new things that are happening right now that are really taking off. Like affiliate marketing is where you actually give a piece of pie, let's say 50%, but you're still getting 50% you wouldn't have otherwise, right?
Yes.
So you actually create all these individual websites that are very specific by code, so you know where it's coming from, so it's easier when it comes to the accounting process. Those are called affiliate sites that are very powerful. That's just one way of generating additional revenue. Another way is doing private labeling. Okay, so then you have your idea, and then you're private labeling to another person that they get a piece of pie, but they have to pay up through a licensing agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
How much time should we budget if it was a brand new company, brand new product? How much time from beginning to end to be ready?
Got it. That's an open-end question. It's kind of like this: are you building a studio or a mansion or a city or a country? There's just so much. It's called what's called a brand architecture, by the way. So if you have like multiple ideas or multiple businesses, then you have what are called sub-brands. Like GM, you got Pontiac, you got Saturn, but the master brand is called GM. Okay. Each one of those can be treated as a separate. They should be treated as a separate business, which requires a separate business plan, which requires separate rules when it comes to actually the trademarks and actually the functionalities.
Howard Lim, everyone, thank you very much.
Thank you.